Hey friends and welcome. I'm Anna Helman and this is my 8th video in a series I'm doing on introducing you to card making and trying to cover all the basics to really help make it simple to get into this hobby. So in this video, I want to talk all about die cutting and embossing. I know that when you're new to this, die cutting and embossing, it could be overwhelming. There's all different kinds of machines on the market. Once you get your machine, there's all these plates. What do you do with them? So in this video, I want to make it really simple for you how to get started. We'll talk a little bit about different types of machines. I'll show you a lot of examples of how to use die cutting and embossing on your cards. I will show you exactly how to do it, and I'll share some of my best tips for making it easy for you. And then at the end, I'll share we'll share some fun projects, a fun way to do die cutting and embossing in combination. And then at the end of my videos, we always chat about life. I'm really excited about today's chat at the end. Friends, if you ever lose faith, I have 4 real life miracles from people that I know personally. And I'm excited to share those stories with you. So stick around. What we're going to do first is talk about some of the machines and different types of machines. So if you are shopping for a machine, there are some differences in them, of course. There's different brands. There are different sizes. You can get electronic ones that send your dies or your embossing folders through on their own versus the hand crank ones that I have here that I'll share with you. And the size differences. So just to give you an idea, I have 2 machines here. I use my standard size machine most of the time. I also have a mini machine. So just to give you an idea of the size difference in them, the cutting platform, the work surface of the larger machine is about 6 inches by 9 inches. And the smaller machine is about 3.5 inches by 7 inches, just under 3.5 by 7. So that gives you an idea. Now, if I'm giving a recommendation, I would definitely recommend having the larger machine to work with because a lot of the dies and embossing folders on the market are not going to fit through the smaller machine. But there are a lot of advantages to the smaller machine. Some of those are, one, the cost to get started. The cost for that machine is about half of what the larger machine is. So if you really want to start die cutting and embossing, but that larger machine is not in your budget, the smaller one is a great place to start. You just have to make sure when you're purchasing dies and embossing folders that they're going to fit through that 3.5 inch width, that the opening that it has. So sizes is definitely something you want to consider. Do you want the larger machine, the smaller machine? The smaller one is a little bit easier to crank. This particular one, I will just mention in case you use it, at times people have a hard time feeding the plates through, but that's because it's made with such a tight clearance to work really well that you just want to offset those plates when you send them through so they're not all lined up perfectly at the front. Offset them a little bit and it should feed through really, really well. But the smaller one is a little bit easier to crank if you go and craft at a friend's house or at church or you travel. The smaller one is really nice for that. For full-size dies, the larger one is what you would want to use. I mentioned there are electronic options out there. I have not used them personally. I've always stuck with these. I've heard good reviews. I've also heard I might as well crank this 10 times by the time it comes out of my machine. So there's all different experiences with the electronic ones out there. I do really encourage you, because these are an investment. They cost a little bit of money. I really encourage you to check out the warranty that comes with your machine. We don't think about these things a lot of times until something goes wrong and we, have a problem and may need a replacement. I broke my large machine several years ago and I thought I was out of luck. I was prepared to have to purchase a new machine for myself, and I checked. One of the amazing things about Stampin' Up, I work with Stampin' Up. Those are the products that I sell and I show in my videos. Customer service is amazing, and we stand behind our products. I say we loosely because I'm not the one who does all of that. But anyway, I called. I found out this machine comes with a 3-year warranty. 3 years. I had no idea. I thought it was 1. So check out the warranty of your machine. Now, I will just mention this. I used to use a Big Shot. So if you're looking at different machines, I liked my Big Shot. It did a good job. What I found was there were a few spots on my plates where it just didn't cut very well, just didn't press quite well enough. My embossing folders, I'd have like one little spot that wasn't as perfect as the rest of it. And I knew all the tricks. You need to add some more cardstock and send it through again. You need to turn the die sideways or turn it at an angle and run it through 12 times and do all these things. So I knew all the tricks to get it to work right. But this machine, I've used it for my first one for several years and my second one for several years. And I don't have to do any of that with it. With almost every die, I send it through one time and it works perfectly. So I highly recommend these machines. I'll have links to all the things I'm going to show today in the video description below if you want to take a look at them. What I want to do now is just share quite a few different card projects with you that have used die cutting and embossing. I'll share some different ways to use it, a few techniques, and then we will get into actually how to die cut and emboss in just a few minutes. So one really great way to use die cutting on your projects is as either a tag or kind of the focal point. You create a basic shape and then you can do stamping or other decoration on it. So here are several examples of that. Now you're going to see these are also embossed as well, but you will see lots of things on these card samples. And if you like these cards, I really encourage you to make sure you're subscribed to my channel because I have shared almost all of these in video tutorials. So that way you'll make sure you see my upcoming videos. Here's another one, words for the greeting. So some die sets actually cut out words. It's a great way to put a fun, bold message on the front of your cards. So those are a few ideas of those. Now, a lot of times we die cut out certain shapes, certain things of interest for the focal point of our card. So these are from a stamp and die set called Fluffy Friends. This was a tutorial I shared for how to make wobblers, those little wire pieces in the background that give movement to pieces on your card. So a lot of times we are creating the focal point. Here's one, this duck pond set. Now I didn't actually use it for the greeting and the tag, but I added in these adorable die cuts down here with the cattails and the lily pads. Then you can get into techniques. So here is one where I had created the die cut from a piece of acetate window sheet. I put some removable adhesive on it, laid it on my card, used some blending brushes over it to create that really nice blended background. That's another way. Here are several cards I made with a set called Magnolia Mood. And there are several different techniques on here. I love to share techniques in my videos. These two were ones I had created these with fabric. So I actually stamped on fabric and used several different techniques for coloring my stamped image. But cut these out of fabric. Here I had used markers to color on my stamp, and then I die cut that out. That's how I got the multiple colors. Here we have some heat embossing on this beautiful magnolia, which I die cut. This was a fun tutorial. I shared how to use your die cuts to create nice edges on your cards. And here's another card I had created in that same tutorial. This is from another set called Lovely and Sweet. Here are some lovely die cuts created with that same set. Hopefully this just gives you some fun ideas for how to use dies and die cutting on your projects. These are all from a really fun set called Latte Love. I have not shared any of these in my tutorials yet, so I wanted to show you all these cards because this is a really fun set that I know a lot of you have had interest in. Let's look at a few ways to use embossing on your cards. So a very common way to use embossing on your cards is to emboss a card mat, either the size of your full card, or a lot of times the ones I use, these measure 4 by 5 1/4. Emboss that full piece and use it as a background for your card. Here are two that I did some stamping on some designer paper. Then I ran those through and I embossed them for some really beautiful backgrounds. Here's one. I die cut the butterfly out first. Then I embossed that piece and laid that designer paper in the background. I like to do this sometimes, stamp and create my background and then emboss it as well. Here are just a couple more examples. Lots of ways to use embossing. And then let's look at a couple of techniques. And I will link to some videos in the video description below for some of these. So one fun thing that you can do with embossing is to apply ink to your embossing folders. And you can do this in several ways. You can do it directly by putting the ink pad against your embossing folder. You can use blending brushes. I used markers on this one. I actually colored those areas of the embossing folder, and then I put my paper inside and ran it through, and it presses that ink onto your embossed image, which is really fun. That's how I did this one. I believe I did this one with embossing or with blending brushes. I applied the ink to that embossing folder before I ran it through. Same thing with this one, with this lovely floral one. Now this one, these two, I embossed and then I applied that color afterwards, after the paper was embossed, with some blending brushes. Give you an idea of that. This was a really fun one, my little stamping helper. Isn't this a beautiful card? My 10-year-old daughter created this. I helped her do the blue background. So we applied the blue ink to the embossing folder, put the paper inside, ran it through. So when it came out, we had the blue areas with ink on them, and then the flowers were all white. And then she took some water painters and added that color. And then after that was all painted, can you see the shimmer on it? She added some Wink of Stella to those flowers. Just beautiful, right? That is a work of art right there. So there are a ton of ideas for how to use die cutting and embossing in just a couple of minutes. Now let's take a look at how to actually die cut and emboss. The way to use different machines will vary depending on the machine that you have, but they should all be similar. And you should get instructions with it for which pieces, which plates to use depending on what you're doing. If you're die cutting or embossing or using different thicknesses of embossing folders, for example. So here is the key for this machine. I love that it includes this. After I did this a few times, I didn't really have to check with this, but while you're learning, this is really helpful. So this first diagram is for using thin dies, the thin metal dies, as you can see here. The second one is for standard embossing folders, and the third one is for 3D embossing folders, which are thicker ones that we have available. So let's do embossing first. One of the other things I love about this is that the plates are numbered. That really makes it easy. So let's do embossing first. So we are going to need plate 1 and plate 4. Our embossing folder will go in between them with the paper inside. So here is my embossing folder. It's just a piece of plastic that opens up like a folder. Put my paper inside and close it. And then I need plate 4 on top. So then I just push this until it will stop when it gets into the center of the machine, and I start cranking here. Once it starts to feed in, I grab the handle on top just to secure everything. Depending on what you are doing, it may take a little bit of effort to crank it through, and sometimes the machine may jump around, so that's why I like to secure it with my other hand. Now this is the fun part. This is where we get to see the amazing result of what we just did. So isn't that beautiful? It's so easy, and this adds so much to your projects. So that's how to do embossing. Now let's do some die cutting. And I am going to use this Seaside die set here. So let's cut, we are going to cut, actually we're going to make a card in just a minute using these pieces we're preparing. I'm really excited about sharing a card with you made with this Seaside Wishes set. So we're going to do some die cutting and embossing to create this card. So for my thin dies, it tells me here I need plate 1, plate 2, and then I need both of my plates number 3. In between plates number 3, I will lay my paper down and the die will go on top. So here's plate number 1. Here's plate number 2. Here are my plates number 3. Now these are brand new, so when you get your machine, this is what they should look like, but I want to show you the plates that I normally use for my die cutting look like this. These are the ones I use every day. Now, here's a tip. If you start die cutting and your plates start to warp and bend, it gets really frustrating because as these bend, it's really hard to lay your flat dies on and get everything to stay in place and get it cranked through, get it to work right. So how do you keep your plates flat? And this is best to do when you have never cut into them before. You want to mark one as your cutting plate on the bottom and keep one that you never cut into. So this one is very beat up, but I believe it has been cut into just a couple of times, probably at one of my classes when other people were using my machine. But this one in general, I do not cut into it. This is my top plate. This is my cutting plate. And so that helps a lot, but these will still start to bow. As they start to bow, they are, see if I can show you this with my hands, they are going to start to curl this way. So the top one they're going to meet in the middle and then they're going to kind of bow apart on the ends. So what you want to do is flip them over. Some people like to flip them every time they cut. Some people, I usually just flip every once in a while. But if they start to bow like that, send them through so that, we'll see if this makes sense, send them through so that they have the gap in the center and they meet on the ends, and your machine will it will flatten them back out if you send them through this way. Do not send them through so that they're curving like this, because your machine will make it worse and they will warp even more. Send them through like this, okay? Good tip. I have a video on that. I will link to that in the video description below if you want to actually watch the video, but hopefully that gives you an idea. So brand new cutting plates. This is a great time to make sure I'm only going to cut into one of them. And the other one will be my top plate that I never cut into. So here is what we are going to die cut. We are going to cut one of these sand dollar pieces, and we are going to cut this starfish. So I brought in my, and we'll get this to line up. I brought in my brand new cutting plates for another reason, because I wanted you to hear how it pops and cracks when these are brand new, because that's normal. I get a lot of questions about that. After I've used them forever and ever, they go through really easy. They don't pop and crack much, but I want you to hear how it pops and cracks when they are new. So here's a tip. If you keep your cutting plates flat, it is pretty easy to lay your dies on and they stay where you want them to. But this starfish right here, I want that to stay lined up, and when you add your top plate, maybe it's going to move it around a little bit. Just a Post-it note or a little bit of washi tape will fix that. So we'll tape this on here. After you get some practice, I rarely tape anything to hold it in place. I've done this enough that just I'm careful about it when I put my plates on, and usually I can keep everything in place and just not have to worry about the tape. But I wanted to show you that because it can be a huge help to saving some frustration. Okay, now I am pushing it in. If I did not specifically say this, I have the clear cutting plate number 3. I have plates 1, 2, 3, then my paper. The dies you always want to put, there's like a rough edge on one side and the other side is perfectly flat. That rough edge always goes down because that is what cuts through the paper, flat side up. And here we have our starfish. Put this on, push it in to where it stops, start cranking, and secure the top. So we only heard a little bit of popping. I don't know if you even would have noticed that. With bigger dies, you may notice a lot more popping. As long as you don't have to force it through, if you really have to crank hard, double check and make sure you have the right things, the right platforms, the right plates, because you never want to force anything through your machine if it does not want to go, because we do not want to break our machines, right? So here is that cute little starfish. And with this one, I want to share a tip with you. And actually, this is one other thing I've noticed about using this machine is in most cases, a lot of the little tiny pieces pop right out for me and I don't even have to work at that. With my old machine, I would spend hours with my, I'm exaggerating, with my take your pick tool with a piercing tip, poking those little pieces out. But if you do get into that situation, you're having, you have a detailed die and the pieces don't want to poke out, here is a handy tip for you. We have a die rolling brush attachment for this tool I just shared with you, the Take Your Pick tool. This is an older one that I still have, but this is really helpful, and I've gotten a lot of messages from people who used to use this the wrong way, so hopefully this helps. So if all those pieces are still stuck in there, or a lot of them are stuck in, lay it on the foam pad that comes with it, die on top, make sure it all still lines up, it's all in the right place. Just roll over it with the die brush, and when you remove it, well, now my piece doesn't want to come out. When you take it out, most of those pieces should be removed. Really saves a lot of time. So here's this really neat sand dollar piece. And next I want to share with you one more really neat thing that is available now. And these are, they're called hybrid embossing folders. What it is a die set that coordinates with an embossing folder. So this is one that creates words. I'll show you some examples of cards here in just a second. This one creates words. So we have thank you, oh happy day, thinking of you, hello, love you. Quite a few different options here. And some people like to use these together. I'll show you how one of these works in just a second. Some people prefer to do the die cutting and the embossing separately. This is another one. Let's see, this one is called Thoughtful Moments. This one's called Adoring Hearts. We are going to use the Seaside Wishes one to create some beautiful sand dollars. So let me grab these pieces. These are the ones we're going to need. Here are some examples of those others that I just showed you on cards. Now with these, I actually applied some ink to the embossing folder to get that definition of the words. You make me happy, but it may be hard to appreciate how amazing these are on screen, but that right there, I think you can appreciate. So here you get the idea of what it looks like without any ink applied. Aren't these just beautiful? Here are some more that I applied some ink to. But let's see how this sand dollar one turns out. Now I mentioned that some people prefer to do the die cutting and embossing separate. Anytime you are die cutting and embossing the same piece, I recommend doing the die cutting first and the embossing second, because if you emboss first and die cut second, it may flatten your embossing when you do the die cutting, if that makes any sense. So here is how you can use these together if you want to. Now be aware when you use them this way, it is going to cut slightly into the other side of the embossing folder. So if you don't want that to happen, that's why you may want to do the die cutting and embossing separate. So I laid this, just kind of popped into place right there around that raised area of the embossing folder. There we go. Now it's popped in place. Lay my paper over top and fold this over carefully. And we are going to do this the same way as we did the embossing, because that's most of what we have on here. Here's one other tip I will share with you quickly, because I still have these little tiny pieces on my cutting plate. An easy way, I don't know why, easy things like this sometimes take me years to figure out, but I just figured out when you need to clean those little pieces off, you can use the edge of a piece of cardstock or a piece of chipboard, some thin cardboard that you have maybe from one of your paper packs, and just brush those off into the trash can. I have a few strays here. So for our embossing, for the 3D embossing folder, we need plate 1, the embossing folder here, and plate 4. I am so excited about this. I have had this set and I actually have not used it yet, but I have seen examples made with this and they are gorgeous. So we'll pop these out and then we will finish the card. Oh my goodness. So we have this amazing piece we could use for the background if we want to. And then let's look at these sand dollars up close. Pretty amazing, right? So now let's get the pieces for this card. We'll finish this card up. And then hopefully you are an expert at die cutting and embossing and you'll feel confident in trying this out yourself if you never have before. So I already prepared the card background, my card base, with a little bit of designer paper on top. And I want to add these die cuts. Haven't exactly decided where. How about just like that? I don't think I want to use all 3 of the sand dollars. I think I'll save that one for another card. So let's attach these. I'll give you a few tips on how to attach different pieces to your projects. So I like to use tape runner for a lot of my pieces, but sometimes I do bring in my glue, and I will bring in glue for these 2 pieces. When I'm using glue, sometimes I like to apply the glue and actually let it sit for a second. This is my absolute favorite glue, this multi-purpose glue. And after it sits for a few minutes, it starts to get sticky. It attaches pretty fast. Like I usually don't have to wait very long for it to dry and hold in place. But sometimes I do what I'm doing here and I'll apply it and then I'll just let it sit for a second upside down while I do something else. And that just gives it a little bit of time to start to get sticky. So we'll put this one down here. I had put some dimensionals on the back of here. One of them appears to have gone missing, so I'll grab another one. These are so great to pop up pieces on your projects. just put this up here at the top. And now we'll add this. This starfish would have been fun popped up a little bit, but we are keeping this simple. And this piece down here. So I could have layered this on top of sand dollar if I wanted to. I just thought it would be fun to use just like this. So I can add a couple of sequins or embellishments to this, but isn't this amazing with the combination, the die cutting and the embossing? So I hope that helps you get started with die cutting and embossing if you are new to card making, and if you're not new to card making, I hope you learned something as well. So it's the end of my video. We talk about life. We talk about something. I try to share something to encourage you today. And I've been wanting to share these miracle stories from people I know personally for a while, and I'm excited to do that today. So a couple of these are pretty short. Actually, they're all pretty short, but the first one is from a couple I used to go to church with. They had gone away on a trip. They were on some remote island for a few days, and the husband started having, I believe it was severe stomach pain. He was not okay. It was very clear he was not okay. If they had been home or on land somewhere, they would have gone to the emergency room. That's what we do, right? When something goes wrong and we are scared and we don't know what to do, we go to the emergency room. They didn't have that option. They were on this island. They couldn't just drive somewhere. So when we don't have any other options, that's when we pray, right? It's not the way it should be, but it seems like, at least in my life, I'm trying to be better about not waiting until there are no other options to pray like I mean it. So the wife, the husband, when they're telling me the story, tells me that he has never heard his wife pray like this in their life together. So the wife puts her hands on him, prays like they have no other options, and his pain just went away. It just went away, right? Story number 2 was also from another couple that we went to church with, and I just love this one. I love this one. So we live in Amish country, and we went to church with a lot of people who had left the Amish community, and this was one of those couples, and they had never had wedding rings, I don't believe. I don't think they had any rings. So they had left the Amish community, for several years ago, and they had decided they wanted to get wedding rings, and they were on a budget. They went to Walmart, and the wife had she had in her head exactly what she wanted this ring to look like. I get ideas in my head like that sometimes, and then I usually have a hard time finding what I want, right? Because I'm like, I know exactly what I want. Well, it doesn't exist. I can't find it. She had this exact idea in her mind of what she wanted this ring to look like. So they get there, they're looking at these rings at Walmart, and this lady, she was shopping. This lady there in that area, she comes over to them and says, basically, I feel led by the Lord to give you this ring. And it looked exactly like the ring that the wife had in her head, in her mind, of what she wanted this ring to look like. This woman just gives it to them. Is that not amazing? Love this. Okay, I have 2 more really good ones. So, a friend, she's on my Stampin' Up! Team. We've crafted a lot together. Sandy. So Sandy had let me look at my notes because I'm not good at this. She had a blockage in her heart valve, and she had all these tests run, and all these tests confirm that, this blockage is there. And they talked about all the options of what to do, and they had decided to do angioplasty, if you know what that is. So Sandy had been prayed over at church, anointed with oil. These are the things that the Bible says we're supposed to do when we're sick. A lot of times we don't do these things, but did this. The prayer groups were praying for her. Long story short, they go in the day of the procedure, and I believe there were like the people doing the procedure and then like somebody else like watching from a command center or something. I'm not exactly sure how this works, but anyway, someone says, is this the right patient? And the doctor says, well, yeah, it's the right patient. I've known her for years. And long story short, the blockage was gone. It was gone. Gone. And I love that when the doctor or surgeon, whoever, reported to Sandy's husband that, it was gone. And her husband replies, we know who our healer is, right? Love that. And number 4, Denise is someone I've become friends with through the internet. She watches my videos and we've emailed quite a bit back and forth. And I want to read this to you from Denise. I think this was in response to one of my videos, but she said, and yes, I agree with you about the power of healing by the laying on of hands. Many years ago, the pastor of the church that I was attending said that someone in the church had been deaf in their left ear since they were a young child, and that God was going to heal that ear and to come forward. She says, I was so scared that I left the sanctuary and went and hid in the bathroom, but God found me and restored my hearing right there in the bathroom. After church, I went and told the pastor, and he said that he knew that it was me and that God would heal me, even when I was too scared because of my faith and belief that I had. Friends, it is easy to get discouraged in this world, but we have reason to have hope. But we have to believe. I've been hearing these stories about like amazing miracles happening in other countries, and we can, at times, maybe wonder like, well, why aren't these things happening here? Well, the Bible tells us that there was a town, when Jesus was on earth, there was a town he went to where he was not able to perform miracles because the people lacked faith. Do we have the faith? Do we believe in them? Because that is where the power comes from, friends. Amazing things still happen. Do we believe? Do we pray for amazing things to happen? Or do we just pray for the doctors to do their job and to make us feel better? We have to believe in these amazing things. I hope you are encouraged by those stories because I love them and I've been wanting to share them with you. So thanks so much for being here, friends. I appreciate you. I hope you have a blessed day. And I hope you'll be back again next time when I'll be here helping you to handmake with love.